Okay, so I want us to look just one more time. I promise, just one more time at what I think is a super important theme in our culture at the moment that we find ourselves in, and that is this idea of silence and wordlessness, and the ellipsis, that kind of no words moment, the dot 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 in our lives and in this world. A couple of weeks back, we explored a little bit about these two main words, these two main ways even of holding on to this tradition and religion and spirituality and understanding of who God is and what God is. And we use these two weird Greek words, if you remember, house points for anybody who can remember what the words were. The first one was cataphatic. And the cataphatic was this tradition of using words, using positive statements to describe God, positive statements about God. The word literally translates as to bring God down. That doesn't mean to make God sad, although I'm sure we do that sometimes, but instead to draw God closer to us, to help us to understand, to help us to get a better hold of who God is and what God is. To use words and phrases and images and doctrines to help us to understand God. But all of this has to be held, we saw a couple of weeks back, in a balance with another tradition, the apophatic. And this is the tradition of wordlessness, these negative statements about God, what God is not, the mystery, the unspeakableness of God. And even though the cataphatic is so obviously there in our world, everywhere that we go, there's books and magazines, or if you're going kind of into the more kind of churchy kind of world of hymns and artwork and stained glass windows and online articles, there are words about God everywhere. But the other side, the apophatic, that's everywhere as well. It just hides itself under the surface. It's a bit more sneaky, a bit more subtle. All throughout the Hebrew Bible and all through the New Testament, we see this coming up again and again and again, just under the surface, almost in the shadows of our obsessions with words and our obsessions with always having to have the right words. The cataphatic tradition says and argues that God exists. And the apophatic tradition says that God doesn't exist, because God can't exist the way that we understand and experience existence, that God is beyond existence. And the cataphatic and the apophatic need each other. They balance each other out. They go hand in hand. It's not one or the other. It's not an either or here. This is the paradox of both and. And if this is true, if it is both and, then we need to be able to hold space open for them both. And the word for that holding open of space is contemplation. And contemplation isn't about sitting cross-legged with your eyes shut going, That's not, it's not about passivity. It's not about ignorance. It's this opening up of our hearts. It's this opening up of our hearts for long enough not to fight the tension, to try and to fix it, or to try and hide from this paradox of these seemingly opposing opposites in our faith, but to be open long enough to be able to learn something from it. And so with all of that kind of crammed into our heads, I want to read us two Psalms today. And the first one, if you've got your Bibles or your phones or whatever with you, is Psalm 46. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear God, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fail. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice. The earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And most of you have heard that one line in particular from that psalm before. Be still and know that I am God. And that's because as a one-line quote, it gets used loads. It gets used anywhere and everywhere. But when you read it amongst all those other lines in the psalm, it's a little bit surprising. It kind of stands out a little bit. See, you'd expect a poem or a song that contains the line, "Be still and know that I am God." You'd expect that to be all about stillness and peace and calm and quietness. But actually, reading this psalm, hearing this song, it's very dramatic. It's full of war and chaos and confusion and out of controlness. And yet somehow this stillness is still to be found in the middle of it. Be still and know that I am God. So how do we get to know anything? How do we get to know something? Is it by studying? Is it by reading? Is it by being told what it is? Do we get to know God by listening to sermons or watching YouTube videos? And if that's true, is it something that's cumulative as well, cumulative? Do we like? Is it like the more books that we read or the more sermons that we listen to, the more we know God? How do we come to know something? How do we know anything at all? And is stillness a kind of knowing? See, in this psalm it doesn't say, think clearly and know that I am God. It doesn't say, believe the right things and know that I am God. It doesn't say, get all the words right and you will know God. No, it's be still. So, can you know something by ceasing, by stopping, by backing off and away from all of the straining towards needing to know? See, right in the middle of this ugly, messy and brutally honest and real psalm, full of wars and fighting and injustice, right in the middle of that is this be still. See, there's an important truth here that this psalm is trying to show us. Not just about the world in which it was written, and not just in the life and the times of the psalmist, but it's a truth that's being taught and spoken into our world here and now as well. And it's resting in stillness is not backing away from reality, but instead it's moving towards it. Sometimes we can use this kind of idea and this understanding and these feelings surrounding this idea of being still as an excuse to ignore what's actually going on around us. Like we can walk around with our fingers in our ears, or not listening, or bury our heads in the sand. And it's in this ignorant, quiet place, that's where we're going to find God. That's not what this psalm is saying. It's in the middle of all of this complication and mess and wars and earthquakes and famine and protests and riots and lockdown. It's in the middle of all of that you can you find that place of stillness? Even in all of this, can you find that place of rest? Being still isn't about going somewhere else. It's not about escaping. It's not getting away. It's moving towards. So here's the second psalm. Psalm 131. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. But I have calmed and quietened myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. Like a weaned child. What? Again, that one line kind of jumps out amongst the rest of that psalm. What does a child know about God? Well, on the surface, you'd probably think that not very much, really, if anything at all. But you just spend a little bit of time with one of these little ones, you'll feel like you've been in the presence of a spiritual master. The truths that they drop on you, the ways that they see the world, the things that they do, the way that they are, the way that they be, just speaks volumes. You see, it's not just about what these tiny humans do, but it's about what they do to us. I've said it many times before, but growing up, parenting Leah, she has taught me so much about God. You see, when we're in the presence of these weird little people, we turn into something very strange as well, don't we? Some of us talk differently, some of us act differently than any other time than we would. So what is it about babies and about kids? Because they don't fully understand their surroundings, do they? They don't understand culturally what's acceptable behaviour. They don't understand what they should and shouldn't do, or what they should and shouldn't say. So does a baby know any words about God? Do our little kids say, I'm just enjoying the joy of the divine? No. You see, kids just seem to know something before words, beyond language. There's an ancient kind of idea that just before, as a baby is being kind of formed in the womb and before a baby is born, an angel will come and place a finger across their lips to stop them from speaking the unspeakable secrets of God. And that's why we're all born with one of those little indentations on our top lip from where that angel has placed the finger, to stop us from speaking the unspeakable secrets of God. It's no wonder when you get to the Gospels that Jesus says, unless you become like these little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. But then somewhere along the line something happens, doesn't it? We grow up. We depend too much on our words and our understanding and our ability to explain things. As we grow up, we make being human all about what's going on in our heads. Thinking the right things, making the right decisions. And we put all of those early childlike things away, like enjoying just being, laughing, loving being alive. What is it? Being content like a weaned child. Okay, so a bit on knowing. There are 4 ways that we can know. We have thinking, feeling, sensing, and imagination. And as adults, we tend to kind of get stuck in the first of these things, in the thinking. Which sometimes, if we're a little bit adventurous, we'll drift into the second, the feeling. But we mainly stay camped out in thinking. That's how we know. We think things. I think, therefore I am. We think things. But as a child is all about the second kind of feeling, and then moving into the third and the fourth stages as well. It's all about feeling and sensing and imagination. I see, a lot of the time the church experience is about thinking. It's about using and believing the right words It's about thinking and singing and reading the right things, having the right doctrines, even behaving in the right way. But what about sensing? Because the Bible tells us to taste and see that the Lord is good. And what is tasting and seeing, if not a sense? And what about feeling, the next level down? And sometimes at church and worship events, remember those? We'll talk about how something's felt or had a feeling or a vibe about a particular thing that went on, but that's about as close as we get. And then what about imagination? Well, it's sad to say, but imagination isn't really something that we tend to connect with the church. So back to the psalm. Is there something in this picture of a weaned child with its mother that helps us to understand what it is to know God? Yes. That's the easy answer. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place for striving and pushing and thinking big thoughts, but there's also a time for just being, relaxing with God, abiding, being comfortable in our own limitations, just enjoying being alive. I try and do an active version of this whenever I can by going and running or by getting out there and walking the dog, just getting out into nature, into all of those green places of creation, just seeing and feeling and experiencing how all of this life just kind of goes on without my doing anything, and then being okay with that. Is that a kind of way of knowing God? Might that be what silence and stillness and solitude and wordlessness can move us back towards? Kind of different kind of experience. So I just want to finish by pulling 4 examples from the life of Jesus, just 4 little extracts from the Gospels. Mark 1:35 says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Luke 4:42, at daybreak Jesus went out to a solitary place. Luke 5:16, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. And Luke 6:12, one of those days Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. All 4 of these scenes have one thing in common. Jesus moves away from people. Jesus leaves. Jesus pursues a life of solitude and stillness and silence. He doesn't want to hear any more disciple questions about who's the greatest or what are we going to feed them. But this moving away, this shrinking back, this aloneness doesn't fit the plan, does it? The plan that we have, the list in our heads, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. See, if we were Jesus' PR people, we'd say, Jesus, you've only got a limited time here. And if you want to reach and teach and impact the most amount of people, you need to stay with these big crowds around you. You can't keep going and wandering off. You've got to be with the people. You've got to be with the hustle and the bustle and the noise. But he goes off alone. He goes up mountains. And we might look at that or read those words and put ourselves in that position, in that situation of the disciples and say and think, what is he doing? What a waste of time. Where's the production value in that? What's Jesus achieving by doing that? And we miss this aspect of Jesus a lot of the time. Because when we say following Jesus, we mean following his teaching. We mean doing what he does, living a life like his. But we're always talking about this living a life of action, of doing things. But we don't tend to follow him to this, do we? This being. Have you ever said, I'm a follower of Jesus, so I'm going to spend the night alone up on a mountain? No. We don't do that. You don't tend to hear that very much, do you? In the New Testament, Paul has his big conversion experience on the road to Damascus where he's confronted by Jesus. And then what does he do? He spends about 15 years on his own in Arabia. Doing what? Well, we don't know. He doesn't tell us. Maybe nothing. Maybe contemplating. Maybe just being still. See, Jesus' disciples come to him one day and they say, teach us how to pray. John's disciples taught him how to pray. We want you to teach us how to pray. And because of that, we get the Lord's Prayer, a fantastic tool, a fantastic thing that we can use and grab hold of and utilise in a very real way. We get the Lord's Prayer, fantastic. We get words. But I would argue that Jesus had been teaching them how to pray all along, way before they asked for this prayer, without saying words. See, the disciples would wake up in the morning and Jesus just wouldn't be there. He'd be gone. Up on a mountain somewhere, up on a hillside, alone, silent, still, being, praying. And it seems like Jesus' actions less than his words. Jesus is showing us that silence and stillness and separation and breaking off from the busyness of life is crucial to a relationship with God. But silence and solitude can scare us, can't they? No people, no books, no phone, no background noise, no technology, no hum going on in the background. That scares us. Because then we might find something. We might have to face up to something inside of us. To face the real self. Not the image that we choose to show on Instagram or Facebook. But the real you. Because all of our life seems to be about distractions, doesn't it? Those bits of plastic and glass and microchips that we carry around in our pockets can just swallow up time. You go on Twitter and half an hour later, you're still on Twitter. We can distract ourselves to death. But what Jesus is teaching us, with his actions as well as with his words, is that stillness isn't about achieving something else. No. Stillness and silence and solitude and contemplation isn't just something to do, something to tick off our checklist, so that we can then experience something else. We do this so that we get, no. Wordlessness and stillness is its own benefit. I don't think Jesus was like, in order to perform 15 healings today, I really need to spend some time in silence and solitude. No. He pursued that for its own reward, to meet with God the Father then and there. And the twist is that it's in a life that's spent pursuing this inward searching, this silence and solitude, the wordlessness. It's in a life pursuing that all of the other stuff tends to spill out anyway. Spilling out into compassion and out into time and out into love for others. Connecting with God means connecting with myself and then connecting with others. So friends, today, may you be still and know God and know yourself and know others. Amen.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here.
stop working. Even when I can see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working.